The wagon train had moved on, leaving behind a cloud of dust and a young couple standing alone under the vast Arizona sky. Eliza Hart held her husband Samuel's hand tightly, her heart a mixture of excitement and fear. Before them lay the reason for their long, difficult journey, a small plot of land with a simple wooden cabin that would be their new home. The town of Dry Creek was not much to look at, just a single dusty street with a general store, a blacksmith, and a saloon. It was a hard place in a hard land, where the sun was hot and the water was scarce. But to Eliza and Samuel, it was a paradise of their own making, a blank page where they would write their future together. They worked from sunrise to sunset every day, their hands growing rough and strong. Samuel cleared the stubborn land for a garden while Eliza made the cabin into a home, stuffing cloth into the gaps in the walls to keep out the wind. Their love was their comfort, a warm light inside the little cabin that made the hardships outside seem smaller. They would talk for hours by the firelight, dreaming of the family they would start and the life they would build in this new territory. They imagined children laughing in the yard and fields full of crops. For them, this was the beginning of everything. Tragedy, however, does not wait for dreams to be ready. To earn money for supplies and livestock, Samuel took a job at the silver mine on the edge of town. The work was dangerous and the days were long, but he always came home to Eliza with a smile. Then one evening, he did not come home. A boy from the town came running to the cabin instead, his face pale. There had been a cave-in at the mine. The words that followed were the worst Eliza would ever hear. Samuel was gone. The world, so full of color and promise just that morning, turned gray and silent for Eliza. The lonely howl of the wind at night was her only company. The townsfolk, who had never been overly friendly to the new couple, now looked at her with a mixture of pity and unease. A woman alone was a fragile thing in such a place. Eliza faced the coming winter alone, struggling to manage the chores Samuel had done, her grief a heavy cloak she could not take off. She was isolated in her small cabin, with only the memories of her husband and the daunting, empty future stretching out before her. Winter eventually loosened its grip on the land. The snow melted, revealing patches of stubborn brown grass, and a timid sun began to warm the hard earth. For Eliza, the changing season brought a different kind of shift, one happening deep inside her. She first noticed a strange tiredness that sleep could not cure. Then came mornings where her stomach would turn at the smell of coffee. A thrilling and terrifying suspicion began to grow in her mind. One evening, resting her hand on her belly, she knew for certain. A tiny, secret life was growing within her. A spark of pure joy, the first she had felt since Samuel's death, flared in her heart. This child was a piece of him, a final gift from their love, a reason to keep going. She clung to that secret joy in the lonely silence of her cabin. She remembered their last night together with a painful clarity. Samuel had been so hopeful, so full of love and plans for their future. This baby was the beautiful, living result of that love. She would tell her child all about their brave and kind father. She would make sure Samuel was not forgotten. For a few precious weeks, this hope was her own private world, a small, bright light in the shadows of her grief. She would hum as she worked, already dreaming of the baby who would fill the empty cabin with sound and purpose. But reality, as harsh as the desert sun, soon broke through her private happiness. She knew how people thought in a town like Dry Creek. They were quick to judge and slow to forgive. She began to notice the sideways glances from other women when she went to the general store for supplies. Her body was beginning to change, and she knew she could not hide the truth for much longer. The kindly old storekeeper, Mr. Jenkins, once asked after her health with genuine concern, and she had quickly looked away, mumbling an excuse about the winter chill. The whispers started as soft as rustling leaves, but they grew louder each week. The warmth in people's eyes cooled into suspicion and then hardened into disapproval. Her secret hope was being smothered by the cold, turning hearts of the town, and she felt more alone than ever before. Of course. Here is Chapter 3, written to be exceptionally detailed and immersive, as if for a long, narrated video segment. Hashtag, 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 Chapter 3. The Push into the Mud. The sun beat down on the dusty main street of Dry Creek, baking the earth into a hard, cracked canvas. It was a Sunday, and the air was still heavy with the sound of the church service that had just ended. Inside her small cabin, Eliza faced an empty flour sack and a hollow feeling of dread. She had nothing left to eat. She had put off this trip for days, hoping for a miracle, but now she had no choice. Taking a deep breath, she smoothed her worn dress over her swelling belly, a silent plea for courage. The walk into town felt longer than ever before, every step an effort under the weight of the watching windows. She could feel their eyes on her the moment she stepped onto the street. Families clad in their Sunday best were clustered in front of the church, sharing gossip and pleasantries. A silence fell over groups as she passed. The whispers began, not even trying to be secret anymore. She kept her eyes fixed straight ahead, focused on the wooden sign of the general store that seemed a mile away. She could hear the words, sharp and clear like shards of glass. They said she had no shame. They questioned the memory of her husband. They judged the life growing inside her without knowing a single truth. She was almost there. The door to the store was within reach. Just then, a group of women detached themselves from the crowd and moved to block her path. They were led by Mrs. Caldwell, the mayor's wife, whose face was pinched into a mask of righteous anger. The other women fanned out behind her, a wall of judgment in fine bonnets and Sunday dresses. Eliza tried to step around them, her voice a quiet murmur asking them to please let her pass. Mrs. Caldwell's hand shot out, not to hit, but to shove, a hard and sudden push against Eliza's shoulder. The world tilted. Eliza's feet slipped from under her on the loose gravel at the road's edge. She fell backwards with a cry that was cut short as she landed heavily in a deep, stagnant puddle of mud left by the last rain. The cold, thick ooze soaked instantly through her dress, shocking her skin. For a moment, she was too stunned to move, lying in the filth, humiliated and breathless. A wave of laughter erupted from the crowd that had now gathered to watch the spectacle. Men chuckled nervously. Children pointed. Women covered their smiles with their hands. Eliza struggled to push herself up, her arms sinking into the soft mud, her face streaked with tears and dirty water. She was trapped in that pit of public shame, surrounded by the mocking faces of the town, completely and utterly alone. The cruel laughter of the crowd seemed to fill the entire world, a harsh noise that drowned out Eliza's quiet sobs as she struggled in the cold mud. She closed her eyes, wishing the earth would simply swallow her whole to end the humiliation. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the laughter stopped. A deep, uncomfortable silence fell over the street. Eliza could feel a presence nearby. She slowly, fearfully, opened her eyes. Standing between her and the crowd was a man she had seen only a few times before. His name was Kuuhtishé, a Chiricahua Apache who occasionally came to Dry Creek to trade. The townspeople parted for him, not out of respect, but out of a wary uncertainty. He was a quiet figure, known for his fairness in trade, but he remained a mystery to them. He did not look at the silent, staring people. His entire focus was on Eliza, lying broken in the mud. His dark eyes held no pity, which would have felt like just another kind of judgment. Instead, they held a profound and calming understanding. He moved with a quiet grace that seemed out of place on the dusty street. Without a word, he knelt in the mud beside her, his own well-worn clothes becoming soiled without a second thought. He showed no anger toward the crowd, no haste in his actions. He simply existed in that moment with her, acknowledging her pain with a silent, solid presence. From a soft leather pouch on his belt, he drew a small clay vial, stoppered with a plug of wood. His movements were slow and deliberate, almost ceremonial. He removed the plug and poured a small amount of clear water onto a piece of clean, soft buckskin he carried. The air around them was suddenly filled with a faint, fresh scent, like rain on dry earth and clean mountain sage. It was a smell that spoke of places far away from the dust and judgment of Dry Creek. With a tenderness that made Eliza's tears flow anew, he began to gently wipe the mud from her face. His touch was feather-light and reverent. As he cleansed her cheeks and forehead, he spoke to her in a low, melodic voice. He used words from his own language, words she could not understand, but their meaning was transmitted through his gentle tone. He was telling her that the water was from a sacred spring, a place where the earth's spirit was strong and pure. He told her it was water that held the power to wash away lies and the pain they cause. He was not performing a magic trick for the crowd. This was a private act of kindness, a restoration of dignity for a person who had been stripped of it. With each soft stroke of the buckskin, he was not just cleaning mud, he was wiping away the cruelty, the shame, and the false words that had put her there. He was giving her back her face, and in doing so, he was giving her back herself. The crowd could only watch, utterly shamed by this quiet display of decency. The entire main street of Dry Creek was frozen in a tableau of profound shame. The only sound was the soft, gentle voice of the Apache man and the ragged breath of Eliza as he washed her face. The townspeople were utterly captivated, not by spectacle, but by the weight of their own collective guilt. They had been shouting moments before, but now they were silenced by a kindness they knew they did not deserve. Their eyes were fixed on the scene, unable to look away from the quiet dignity of the man and the devastating vulnerability of the woman they had tormented. The dust motes hung motionless in the sunbeams, as if time itself had paused to witness this moment of reckoning. From the back of the stunned crowd, an old man began to push his way forward. It was Dr. Henderson, the town's physician. His face was ashen, and his hands trembled slightly. He had been standing at the edge of the gathering, a silent witness to the cruelty, and the sight of the stranger's compassion had shattered his resolve to stay quiet. He could bear the weight of his secret knowledge no longer. He stepped into the clear space between the crowd and where Kuuhtishé still knelt. He cleared his throat, a rough, nervous sound that broke the silence. He did not speak to Eliza first. Instead, he turned to face the people of the town, his neighbors and friends, and his voice, though old, was loud and clear enough for everyone to hear. He told them he had something to say, something he should have said a long time ago. He confessed that the night before the mine collapse, Samuel Hart had come to see him at his home. The young man was full of love and hope, and he had asked a question born of pure devotion. Samuel had asked if it was possible for a child to be conceived from a single night of love, because he wanted a child with his Eliza more than anything in the world. The doctor looked around at the faces of the women who had done the pushing, at the men who had laughed. He told them he had looked Samuel in the eye and given him his professional word. He had said yes, it was absolutely possible. It was more than possible, it was a beautiful and natural thing. The doctor's voice grew stronger, laced with a sharp regret. He admitted that after Samuel died, he had kept this truth to himself. He saw the whispers start and saw Eliza being shunned, but he was a coward. He was afraid of being associated with the scandal, of being drawn into the ugly gossip. He had chosen his own comfort over the truth, and he was deeply sorry for it. His confession hung in the air, a solid, undeniable thing that completely dismantled every cruel assumption and every hateful whisper. The truth, so simple and pure, washed over the crowd, and they had nowhere to hide from it. A deep, heavy silence followed the doctor's words. The truth settled over the street like a blanket, smothering the last remnants of the crowd's anger and leaving only a cold, uncomfortable shame in its place. The Apache man, Kuuhtishé, finished his task with a final, gentle touch. He looked into Eliza's now clean face and gave a single, slow nod. It was not a nod of pity or of victory. It was a nod of profound respect, an acknowledgement of her endurance and the validity of her truth. Without a single glance at the stunned townspeople, he stood, turned, and walked away. His footsteps were silent on the dusty road as he moved past them, and not a single person dared to speak to him or try to stop him. He disappeared as quietly as he had arrived, a figure of grace who had entered their world of noise and judgment, performed an act of pure kindness, and then returned to his own. Eliza slowly, carefully, pushed herself up from the mud. Her body was sore, and her dress was ruined, but her head was held high. The physical weight of the mud was nothing compared to the emotional weight that had been lifted from her heart. She looked at the faces of the people who had surrounded her. Mrs. Caldwell, the mayor's wife, would not meet her eyes, staring fixedly at the ground as a bright red blush of humiliation spread across her cheeks. Other women found sudden interest in the sleeves of their dresses or the clouds in the sky. The preacher had already retreated into the shadowy doorway of his church, unable to face the woman he had condemned without facts. A few people mumbled half-formed apologies that were lost in the thick air of their own embarrassment. Eliza did not wait for a proper apology. She did not need their words anymore. The truth was her shield now. She walked toward the general store, and the crowd instinctively parted for her, creating a wide path. She moved with a new and quiet dignity, each step firm and sure. She entered the store, got her sack of flour, and placed her payment on the counter. The storekeeper, Mr. Jenkins, simply nodded, his usual chatter completely absent. When she walked back out into the sunlight, she did not look left or right. She simply began the long walk home, leaving the silent, shamed town behind her. She knew that things would be different now. They would not be her friends, but they would no longer be her tormentors. She was free. The path ahead was still difficult, but she walked it alone out of choice, not out of exile, and that made all the difference. She carried with her the memory of a quiet strength and a kindness that had changed everything. The summer that followed was one of hard work and quiet peace for Eliza. She tended her small garden, and the land, perhaps sensing her newfound strength, seemed to yield its bounty more willingly. The people of Dry Creek left her alone, but their silence was no longer cold. It was the silence of respect, and sometimes of shame. They would sometimes leave an extra loaf of bread on her fence post or a basket of eggs, never admitting it was from them. Eliza accepted these quiet offerings not as friendship, but as a truce. Her world was small, but it was hers, and she was its fierce and capable guardian. When her time came, Eliza brought a healthy baby boy into the world in the quiet solitude of her cabin, with only the town's now deeply respectful Dr. Henderson to assist. The first time she held her son, she wept tears of pure joy. He had his father's eyes, a deep and warm brown that seemed to look right into her soul. She named him Samuel, for the brave father who had given his life and who had given them this precious gift. She whispered stories of his father's kindness and his dreams into the baby's ears as he fell asleep, ensuring the man she loved would never be forgotten. As young Samuel grew, he was curious about the world and his place in it. He asked about the father he never knew. He asked why they lived a little apart from the town. And so, when he was old enough to understand, Eliza told him the whole story. She told him of the deep love he was born from. She told him about the sadness and the loneliness. And she told him about the terrible day in the mud, the day the world seemed so cruel. But most importantly, she told him about the quiet man who appeared like a spirit, the man who knelt in the mud without fear of what others thought. She described the feel of the holy water, not as a magic potion, but as a symbol of a pure heart washing away the stains of hatred. She explained that the man's name, Kuuhtishé, was a powerful word. It meant a cleansing, a washing clean, a making new. She told her son that true strength is not in pushing others down, but in helping them up. It is in having the courage to be kind, even when everyone else is being cruel. That night, she gave her son a second name, a secret name of honor and strength to carry alongside his father's. She named him Kuuhtishé. It was a name that was not meant for the town to hear, but for him to hold in his heart. It was a promise to always remember that one person's courage and compassion can change everything, and a reminder that from the muddiest of moments, a new beginning can grow. The end.